Okay, so in the last video, we talked about denial. And the thing about denial is that every human being has it. It's a defense mechanism that we use typically because of fear. That's a very common reason why we might have denial. We're afraid of pain. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid. Sometimes people have denial because they are worried if I try this other thing, I've tried so many things and nothing works. I don't want to try maybe the last thing or this new thing that somebody mentions because it's just going to reinforce how hopeless I am. When I fail at this new thing, then it will show that I am a hopeless case. And then it increases our shame and our pain even more than we already have it. So if I can sit in my current state and figure out how to survive and feed on the denial I currently have, then it will prevent me from experiencing even more pain. So what we need to talk about today is understanding the resistance. So a lot of times we might tell ourselves that I don't have a problem, or I don't need help, or it won't work for me. Every single one of us wants to be free from whatever it is that's keeping us stuck. And with sexual compulsivity or sexual addictions, like I mentioned, we're so afraid of that pain that we dismiss, we reject, and we refuse help. But because we do that, it prevents us the opportunity to truly become free. Sometimes we tell ourselves, I can figure this out on my own. And the sad part about that is if you and I could figure it out on our own, we wouldn't still be struggling with it. We would have figured it out a long time ago. But typically, for an addict, the addiction came in at such an early age, and the addiction was trying to resolve deep and unmet needs that the child had so early. So the child is stuck and confused and starts using this compulsive behavior to try and get needs met underneath. And as the kid gets older, then they keep trying to figure out how to get out from being stuck. But the underneath being stuck were the original needs to start with. And so it's nearly impossible for somebody to be able to stumble on what those underlying needs were to get unstuck on their own. If you knew how to meet those needs, you'd be doing it. But at this point, there's so many layers to the addiction that the needs aren't even visible. So we have to get out of the mentality that we can do it on our own. We have to acknowledge that we're hurting ourselves and others. And even though that's super painful, because it can bring on a feeling of hopelessness, if we don't acknowledge that, then we're going to continue to hurt ourselves and others. And this problem is just going to go on, damaging the relationships that we care most about. And sometimes damaging the relationships so much that they're not recoverable. We have to accept the hard truth that this problem isn't going away, because if we don't acknowledge it, we give it more power. So by acknowledging that this problem is real, that it's hurting ourselves, that it's hurting others, and by facing being accountable for what's actually going on, we decrease its ability to continue to hurt us. Now, it does bring up more pain in the immediate moment. It's like having a big bruise on your leg that won't go away, and you can pretend all day long that it isn't there, and sometimes it doesn't feel very painful, and by acknowledging it, we are touching it, trying to figure out like where it came from, seeing if it's spreading, right? And this analogy may not be great, but consider that if we're gonna help it to heal, well, we've got to examine it. We've got to take a look at it. Otherwise, it will continue. So another big facet of denial is that we think it won't work for me. And usually when I see this come in, it's because somebody has tried so many things already, and they've put their heart and their soul into trying to find healing. Many times paying other professionals or doing exactly what they were told by a church leader or a family member or somebody else who went through recovery. And when it didn't work out, it was just easier just to give up hope and say, you know what, let me just figure out how to be happy with this, because otherwise it won't, it's not going to go away anyway, so let me just figure out how to live with it. So we have to get rid of the idea that getting help won't work for me. And what I've learned as a client comes in, they haven't tried everything. Sometimes it's not that they haven't read a certain book or they haven't opened up to somebody about this problem before. Sometimes it's the order of operations. It's we need to start and focus on this piece first, then we're going to jump over here, then we're going to come back and work on that. And as we learn what order things need to go in, and for each person it's pretty unique, but as we learn the order or which tools to use, some tools are more effective for one particular type of compulsivity than another. And as we learn which resources to use, so this ARP group maybe wasn't helpful, we're going to try a different one. Some people have done ARP, but they haven't done group therapy. So it's really important that when we have this belief system in our head that it's not going to work for me, the truth is what I've done in the past hasn't worked for me. So now I've got to try something different. I've got to trust the process. I've got to turn myself over to somebody else that's more capable. Consider that you are probably highly intelligent. You know yourself fairly well. Maybe you've read a lot. You've watched a lot of videos, or maybe even like this one, and you're a smart and intelligent person. But it's like a neurosurgeon trying to do brain surgery on themselves. It's not going to turn out very well. We need somebody who can step away from the situation, see it from an outsider's perspective, and then come up with a plan. One of the hardest things about recovery is the commitment. It requires so much time and energy and effort. I often tell my clients, in fact, the clients of mine who struggle the most over the course of their lives are the ones who learn something that works for them, they feel better, and then they stop doing it. They stop doing the thing that's working for them because they think, I'm better, I'm good. And the problem is, in the recovery process, it is required that Once you learn what works for you, you continue to do that throughout the rest of your life. And so it is a life change. The commitment that is required in order to do recovery is pretty heavy. It's pretty consistent individual therapy. I recommend most of my clients, when they're first starting off, once a week, then we go to every other week, then every couple of weeks, while you're doing group work on top of that. In addition, often to 12-step work as well. So, and then at some point, couples therapy to help the relationship heal. So there's a tremendous commitment and lots of reading, lots of studying, lots of journaling, and lots of reaching out to people who you haven't previously reached out to create a support system of help. So there is a tremendous commitment, but it's doable. It's like committing yourself. Anybody can run a marathon. Anybody can do a sprint triathlon, right? It just requires us to commit. Now, you might say, oh, well, some people can't. No, the truth is anybody can complete it. But for some, it's going to take a lot longer than others. For some, they're going to be competitive racers, and others, man, it's just about crossing the finish line. Even if you walk every single step, you can complete a marathon. So it's about recognizing that I'm going to dig in, I'm going to commit, regardless of how long this takes, because I want to be free from this. Part of the commitment is really learning to pull back layer by layer each of the pieces that need to be pulled back so that we can truly see what's going on inside. And it's slow at times, because one piece to pull back can be a lot of pain, can be a lot of difficulty, and other pieces come off in big chunks. But it requires slow, steady, consistent dedication to find what's really going on in the center for each person. I often tell the partners that I'm working with, because they'll ask me, how do I know? How do I know that she's recovering? How do I know that he's recovering? And I will often say, look at the patterns in their lives. Are they committed and doing just their little everyday things that they weren't doing before? Are they doing a little bit of reading every day? Are they going to their therapy sessions? Are they talking to you about what they're learning? Are they hanging out with friends instead of isolating? What are the things that they're doing, and how does that contrast to how they were living when they were active in their addiction? You can see it in the way that they live their lives. But that, in order to live our lives that way, it does require a lot of dedication and change and commitment.